Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the UK government's rather baffling threats to the United States to trigger a trade war with them as their Brexit policy hits our steel industry, but also how it might make some sense with the news coming out that we are potentially starting to behave ourselves over Northern Ireland. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. This is going to be messy, by the way. But before I get onto the specifics, let's consider the general concept. So I saw the BBC News recently reporting that our new International Trade Secretary, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, has warned the United States that we will take them on in a trade war if they don't reverse Trump's steel and aluminium tariffs. The same tariffs, because that's what's caused this row, the same tariffs that the US has removed from the EU, but not the UK. Now, I talked about this not long ago. It was said to be because the US weren't happy about our plans to trigger Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol, something the government obviously feels it can't back down from or couldn't because of the pressure they are sustaining from their own benches. Like before PMQs on Wednesdays, it was Northern Ireland questions. There was a debate on Northern Ireland. The usual suspects were very robust in calling for Article 16 to be triggered. Mark Francois was particularly obnoxious about it. No change there. Probably still pissed off that no publisher wanted to touch his book and he's had to pay to publish it himself. The point being that if the government announced that it is confident that the negotiations will achieve a good working arrangement and that they are removing their threats to trigger Article 16, then they would face a bit of a rebellion from their backbenchers. I don't know how large, but as this is a Conservative parliamentary party heavily stacked in favour of committed brexiteers after Johnson dropped anyone who opposed not just Brexit but his hard Brexit, then you would think the rebellion could be significant. And this seems to be exactly what the government would be doing. Like, bear in mind, everyone was of the firm belief that Johnson intended to trigger Article 16 last month. Certainly it appears that David Frost was of this view. Then something happened. The EU threatened to dissolve the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. And this wasn't just a notion being put forward by France and Ireland. It had the support of the other major economies in the EU. This was a game changer, because David Frost had always said he'd believed that France and Ireland would be isolated, that the rest of the EU wouldn't back them. But they were. Then, for good measure, the various branches of the United States objected quite strongly to the prospect of unilaterally mucking about with the protocol. So the impact of one or both of the threats clearly made the government draw back. I've already said that when Boris Johnson needed a distraction last week, he chose to use COVID measures to do that. He did that knowing that it would infuriate many of his own MPs as well as cabinet. The only explanation for this was that he had nothing else left in his toolkit. Nothing at all. That suggested to me that he has now decided it is not worth triggering Article 16 unless, as I also said, he feels it is his last throw of the die to remain Prime Minister. And even then, he may not bother if he thinks that is still certain to sink him anyway. And credence is now being given to this notion because there have been reports in the past couple of days in numerous media that EU journalists have been told by British officials that the government is no longer bothered about the role of the European Court of Justice. Now, this is pretty major. For most of this year, Johnson and Frost were belly aching about checks that didn't need to take place. They weren't bothered about the European Court of Justice. They were going on about these checks, like goods that were of low risk of ending up in the Republic of Ireland. Why do checks need to apply to them? And it's like, well, they don't, but how can we prove that they're only going to be staying in Northern Ireland? That was the issue. So then the EU came up with a comprehensive set of measures as a result of consultations with the much more helpful and constructive businesses of Northern Ireland. All of a sudden, Frost's main objections were sunk. He still tried to claim that the moves didn't go far enough, of course, but he didn't seem to be able to provide much detail on specific examples of the problems that would still exist. So he switched to belly aching about the role of the European Court of Justice instead. So now we're seeing officials saying that the UK government has dropped that objection now. This means that a negotiated settlement that should solve as many practical problems as possible while still allowing Britain to maintain divergence over the EU. In other words, British officials are basically briefing that the threat to trigger Article 16 has receded. Obviously, it would be much more powerful if Boris Johnson or his Brexit monkey were to announce this, but I can't see that happening. As I said, some Tory MPs were pretty forthright in their demands to trigger Article 16. The Northern Ireland minister, whilst talking about the preference for a negotiated solution, was not ruling out that unilateral action as of a few days ago. But I think if they've privately decided to do just that, that may explain these briefings. The thing is, and this is where it gets very messy, I don't actually know how many Tory MPs really care. Like some, like Francois and Baker, are making a public show of caring quite a bit, and I can sort of believe that they do. But do they have that much support? No matter how much I might try and be convinced by reports that the government understands that it cannot win a trade war with the EU and the US combined, or even one of them on their own, the politics is highly chaotic. I am now satisfied that Boris Johnson does not intend to trigger Article 16. But Boris Johnson has pissed off every faction in his party now. He has upset the Red Wall Tories, who are not getting the levelling up that they were promised. He's pissed off the Shire Tories, who have just voted through the highest tax burden in 3 generations. He's pissed off the COVIDiots by implementing new measures against the pandemic, particularly galling to them as they know that the only reason he's done it is to distract from his clown car crash over the last year's Christmas parties. And now he's pissed off the hardline brexiteers who were expecting Article 16 to finally be triggered last month, and they'll be seeing the same reports that I am. Which talk of British officials who are directed by the British government telling EU journalists that we're falling back into line and behaving ourselves over the protocol and withdrawing our ridiculous objections. Who's left in the parliamentary party that he hasn't annoyed? Are there any more factions I've forgotten? I don't think there are anymore. But still, this climb down over the role of the ECJ is so huge that, like I say, I think we can be fairly confident that Article 16 is off the table now. Maybe when Johnson is deposed and if he's replaced by someone with a very different idea on our capacity to withstand a trade war against 70% of our export markets, who knows? But for now, it's looking good. It might also put into context those earlier threats to the United States that I was talking about. So when I first read that our international trade minister had threatened the US with a trade war, I was a little surprised, I have to say. This would be an insane move on our part. We have massively weakened our links to the global supply chain. That global supply chain is already struggling with the pandemic. The last thing we need to do is weaken our links even more. But it may make more sense with this news about dropping our more brainless protocol objections. If we can convince both the EU and the US that we are now only going to pursue negotiated changes to the implementation of the protocol, not seeking to rewrite the protocol itself, then the US may decide to remove those Trump-era tariffs on our steel and aluminium, as they are doing for the EU next month. You know, as a reward. They could always do this as a reward for good behaviour, with a warning that those tariffs can go straight back on if we do not honour our word. You know, I still think that Brexiteers in the Conservative Party will be against this move. I don't even think it's just about... If the Northern Ireland Protocol was really just an objection on ideological basis, I would be prepared to believe there's very few Tory MPs really care. You know, but the bottom line is that Northern Ireland has benefited from the protocol. Northern Ireland's economy is the only part of the UK to have almost completely recovered to pre-COVID levels of trade. Their exports have flourished. They are a massive advertisement for the benefits of alignment with the EU. You know, I discussed, was it yesterday, in fact, in a video, how the EU, the major economies of the EU, have almost completely recovered from COVID. Northern Ireland has almost completely recovered from COVID. The UK collectively has not. No part of Britain has. Similarly, this is not just a massive advertisement for the benefits of alignment with the EU. It's a massive advertisement for the damage that divergence from the EU causes. There's the carrot and the stick. As such, I cannot believe that the threats to the protocol will ever be permanently removed until the Conservative government is. You know, and that government is in chaos right now. And to think that the main tagline from the 2015 general election, when David Cameron was still in charge, remember then, his tagline was, you know, vote Tory for stability and strong government or vote Labour for chaos. How's that been working out? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.